In a dimly lit North London flat, the air was thick with the scent of fear. 4 hulking men, stripped of their dignity and their clothes, sat bound to chairs. Their bodies shivered, not from the cold, but from the terror etched into their faces. Across the room, a group of Middle Eastern men barked venomous orders, their words sharp as the carving knives in their hands. Cigarettes were stubbed out on flesh, skin was split to the bone, and knuckle-dusted fists rained down with merciless precision. The room echoed with the sounds of pain and desperate pleas for mercy. None were coming anytime soon. Welcome to London's underworld, where brutality isn't just a tactic, it's business. Here, the same men who kiss their children goodnight can step into a blood-soaked torture chamber moments later, ready to enforce their will with grotesque violence. In this world, loyalty has a price, and betrayal comes at a cost paid in blood. In this episode, we delve into a savage chapter of London's criminal history, a North London syndicate reeling from the loss of a £10 million shipment of drugs. Fingers point to a fearsome crew of bouncers and muscle from London and Essex, a group Carlton Leach himself once called his firm. How did Carlton Leach and his firm cross a feared North London crime family? Who is the Turkish mafia, and how did they become so powerful in London? And how does this bloody saga connect to the infamous Essex Boys murders? The scene inside the North London flat had reached its grim conclusion. 4 broken men sat slumped in their chairs, their bloodied faces a testament to hours of relentless torture. Yet for all the brutality, no answers had come. The heroine, the lifeblood of the Turkish gang's empire, was still missing. Their rage demanded more. According to Carlton Leach's account in Muscle, it was his men, members of his infamous firm of bouncers and enforcers, who found themselves squarely in the firing line. They had worked muscle jobs for a well-known London gangster, someone the Turks already suspected of having a hand in the robbery. For the furious crime clan, that connection was enough. Leach's crew were guilty by association, and now they were marked men. The gang's response was swift and merciless. According to Leach, the 2 brothers at the head of the clan issued an ultimatum: hand over the men for questioning, or face the consequences. These weren't idle threats. Surveillance had already been placed on the suspects and their families. The gang made it clear, if the men didn't cooperate, their loved ones would become collateral damage. But this wouldn't be any ordinary questioning. The gang demanded that the suspects undergo interrogation with a so-called truth serum. It was a method as crude as it was terrifying, designed to break both the body and the mind. Leach claimed the situation had become so dire that the gang's boss flew in from Turkey to oversee the proceedings. Further Middle Eastern reinforcements from the north arrived, escalating the tension to a boiling point. Leach positioned himself as the negotiator in this crisis, balancing the lives of his men against the fury of the Turkish brothers. In Muscle, he recounted how he agreed to hand the men over for interrogation, but insisted on overseeing the process himself. It was a dangerous gamble, but it was the only option to stave off immediate violence. The interrogation, as Leach described it, was a grotesque spectacle. The serum left the men physically ill, their bodies convulsing as they struggled to maintain coherence. Questions came fast and hard. Who stole the stash? Where was it now? But no answers were forthcoming. Either the men were genuinely innocent, or their fear of retribution outweighed their speaking ability. By the end of it, the gang was no closer to recovering their £10 million stash. Their fury was palpable, but for the moment they relented. The men were allowed to leave, battered but alive. Yet this uneasy truce was only temporary. Horrific pain would be in some of their futures. But how did a football hooligan turned bouncer become central in this deadly situation?
Before meeting Anne, Carlton specialised in muscle for hire. Throughout the 90s, he was boss of one of the most feared and respected security firms in the Essex underworld.
Contrary to what the documentary said, it would seem Carlton Leach had interests in pubs and club doors in London, rather than Essex. On the James English podcast, he went into more detail on how he got started in the muscle game after being offered a job on the doors of a club in Stratford.
I was about 21 and I was sort of made myself a reputation on the terraces and people knew me in the East End and everything, so I knew everybody. And I went to the old Moros, Bobby Moore's old club in Stratford, And my mates were doing the door, and he used to go down here like Friday night and everything. And I turned up one night, and they were doorman short. And they said, "Oh, a little firm out of Custom House. Come down last week and banged the doorman out, and he ain't turned up for work. Can you step in?" And I thought, I'm the doorman. I'm just a football fuck. I just want to have a few beers and a laugh, you know what I mean? So I just sort of, I went, yeah, I'll do it. Anyway, standing there, and the next thing I know, the little firm of customers turn up. But I know them all from West Ham. Steve is there, like these brothers and that, well-known family. Anyway, they're all going, I think it's going to kick off. They've all turned up, like 20-handed, like the event's going to kill. I went, I know them all. Like, I went, hi, Steve. I went, Dave, we all cuddled and everything. And they come in, and it all just went.
Leach, in the same interview, went on to name some of the pubs and bars he worked across London, with infamous figures from West Ham's hooligan mobs, before he got into the illegal rave scenes and ran his own doors, including the Ministry of Sound for a short period.
Started off Stratford, Ganshill, Ilford, even done Brixton, this place over South London, Peckham. I worked Peckham. Me mate, you heard Cass, West Ham? Well, Cass had the door over there.
Bennington?
He went to me, yeah. He said to me, to come over and do a fancy bit of work. What's it called? Kisses in Peckham. And I mean, yeah, I went over there. I was the only white man in there. And I just thought, wow. I said, where are you from me into? Like, it was like a go. I mean, but I knew there was a few Millwall boys, Tiny, a few people over there I knew and that. But that was an experience, yeah, getting home and getting there. That was just an experience, let alone working the door all night, you know what I mean? So I've worked everywhere, North London, South London, the rave scene. Well, obviously, we worked everywhere, from the M25, all the warehouses, and just sort of expand.
The bodybuilding gyms in the East End proved a useful recruiting ground for Leach, alongside his trusted West Ham football pals, and he became a man who was well positioned to provide security for not only raves and clubs, but also the underworld that needed muscle for drug deals or to guard stash houses. Carlton was no big-time criminal. Like Dave Courtney from South London, they had used their relationships and contacts to build up an army of muscle they could use to position themselves as a service provider for the real villains, club owners, and the highest bidder. But who was this firm of Turkish gangsters that had been ripped off and had put Carlton's friend in such danger? How did they come to prominence in London's underworld, and why would they entrust millions of pounds worth of drugs to a firm of bodybuilders and hooligans? Turkey is a beautiful country with great traditions and history, but it is also very complex politically. The influx of Turkish and Kurdish populations into London during the 1980s and 1990s was largely a result of political instability and repression in Turkey. The ongoing conflict between the Turkish government and the Kurdish minority, led by groups like the PKK, Kurdistan Workers' Party, was a major factor. This conflict caused widespread displacement as Kurds fled political persecution, economic marginalisation, and violent crackdowns in southeastern Turkey. Carlton Leach referred to the crime family involved as Turkish, but based on discussions with knowledgeable sources, it appears they were a Kurdish clan who were the targets of the robbery, with headquarters on Green Lane. Two prominent Kurdish brothers operated partially out of North London before being jailed at separate times in different countries. This Kurdish gang was part of a major organisation that controlled heroin importation across multiple European countries, including Germany and Holland. Their scale of operations placed them in a completely different league compared to London's local criminal figures. But why would this gang originating out of Turkey entrust such a big load of drugs to be looked after by hired muscle? Surely they would have used their own trusted men. Whatever the reason may have been, we will never know. But according to Carlton, some of his heavies had previously worked with a well-known gangster the Middle Eastern gang trusted. Now the stash was gone, they were being lined up to take the fall.
The European Country Club, Splash, they used to have parties around the pool, and that was about 1990. And it was the first time, but we seen this, I think we come across, but there was all these firm over there, they were all upset, like he had his, and I had all my lot. And he was like looking across this pool and like, the people going, do you know that little firm? I go, nah. Yeah, you're all right. And I think people thought we were going to clash. and we ended up. Someone introduced us. We ended up talking, and we ended up at some after party in Hackney somewhere.
Some suggest that Carlton and Tony weren't particularly close, but the photos clearly indicate they shared some level of friendship. Whether their bond has been overstated is open to speculation, but it's evident they knew each other and collaborated in the security business. In Carlton's book Muscle, he mentions a small-time North London crook who was having an affair with the girlfriend of one of the men tortured. According to Carlton, during pillow talk, the woman revealed the location of a stash house that her boyfriend had been tasked with protecting. The crook, upon learning this, contacted his associates, and together they allegedly robbed the stash house. Carlton later notes that this individual resurfaced after the murders of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe, this time as a supergrass, pointing the finger at Jack Coombs and Mickey Steele for the killings. While Carlton does not explicitly name Darren Nichols, it is strongly implied that he is the person in question. It would be quite the revelation if this were true, and I will discuss the probability of this being accurate at the end when I give my thoughts on the video. These revelations were found out after the event had settled down, and unfortunately, it did not stop the Middle Eastern gang catching up with the gangster they had trusted to look after the stash, despite Leach's best efforts to hide him. The gangster who had arranged the stash house pleaded his innocence to Carlton. He was well respected and had no clear motive to betray the Turks or Kurdish firm. However, the clan felt the need for a second round of interrogation, this time without Leach present. They allegedly kidnapped him, along with several heavies involved in the initial serum test, at gunpoint, and brought them to a room above a flat on Green Lane, where a sadistic team was ready to carry out their brutal questioning. The ordeal these men were reportedly subjected to over the course of 3 days was truly harrowing. Cigarette burns were inflicted all over their bodies. Savage beatings left them as bloody pulps, with teeth knocked out, and they endured stabbing and slicing with razor-sharp knives as their captors demanded answers about the stash. A horrifying experience, if true. Carlton Leach describes this period as a particularly tense time in London's underworld, with accusations and paranoia rippling through criminal circles. The men who were brutally tortured were left broken but alive, with the Turkish or Kurdish clan ultimately satisfied that they knew nothing. According to Carlton, he never found out whether they caught up with those responsible. If the story true, it serves as a stark lesson about the dangers of associating with serious criminals when money or drugs are at stake. Make no mistake, the criminal underworld operates much like a corporate machine. Money trumps everything. However, unlike the corporate world, the consequences can be far more severe, whether you're guilty or merely suspected.
Okay, thank you for watching. That was a scenario that was spelt out in Muscle, Carlton Leach's book, and The Rise of the Foot Soldier, one film where there was some kind of beef between a Turkish mob and Carlton Leach's men or friends, Muscle, that he used. It wasn't involving Carlton himself, but he got involved because they asked him to sort of broker a peace deal or try and sort it out, and it all went pear-shaped. I did do some research on this before I went into look into it more for a video, and I'm told by a source in East London that this did happen, or there was a big drug stash nicked from a Kurdish group, I'm told, from North London, the Green Lane road. He didn't know the exact details of what had gone down. He believed that Carlton was involved in some way or other. Whether the story that Carlton gives and is pictured in the film is accurate, only he and the people involved will know. But it was good enough for me that I had it confirmed that this did go on and it wasn't just a make-believe. And also, I spoke to Michael Kelly, who remembered Tucker mentioning it at some point. So it was worth following up. So then I did some research on the Turkish and Kurdish situation around the 80s and 90s. It'd been going on for a lot longer before that the Kurds felt that they'd been oppressed by the Turkish governments of their identity. So there's a lot of political movements over that. And a lot of Kurdish and Turkish moved to European countries, including England, Holland, Germany. And that was a major source from the criminal underworld in Turkey, who had a big stranglehold on the importation of heroin, etc. It's a very serious criminal organisation. A lot of money involved, not one country level, sort of super cartel level. So not the type of people you want to be getting accused of stealing millions of pounds worth of their drugs. These are not guys who just go around torturing or doing things to people for no reason. It's a business, a bit like a lot like a corporate business. But when they're crossed, they're ruthless. And these guys were allowed to live. So I'm presuming they knew it wasn't them in the end, but they were put through the rigours. A lot of people will say, I'm sure in the comments, Carlton's not what he made out, and he hammed a lot of things up in the books. Well, a lot of people ham things up in books from back in those days on the true crime circuit. Lots of fabrication and stories, and you have to be careful how you sort of pick through them. But it is fact that Carlton Leach was part of the football scene. People forget that he was older than a lot of the notorious criminals that people talk about in East London, a few years older, and Tucker and Tate were as well. So he was involved in that. He did bodyguard Nigel Benn. He was friends with Tucker. How close they were, I don't know. They helped each other out in business as well. The depth of that friendship, only Carlton can confirm, and those close to Tucker, etc. But he was definitely involved in security and muscle work and that type of thing. He was no big villain, but I don't know if he claims to be that or not. But he's made his money on since getting out of crime, etc., on the writing books, on the Essex boys' murders and all that type of stuff, and doing the circuits, the speaking circuits, etc. So fair play to him. But I thought it was interesting area to cover. I haven't seen any videos on it on YouTube, so I thought I'd dig into it. Of course, it takes a long time to edit these videos, so it's only a snapshot, 15-minute snapshot. I could have gone into loads of depth on the Turkish Kurdish side of things. Very interesting, the political situation and the drug situation across Europe. But that's more for a book rather than a short video or even a long documentary. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments. Before I go, obviously I've got to touch on the Darren Nichols accusation. Not accusation, but he sort of pointed towards potentially being Darren Nichols. Now, I don't know if Darren Nichols was from North London originally. It doesn't say anywhere. It just says he was operating around Essex. Now, watching Liquid Bullet Productions and David and Albert, who were looking into that case, the wrongful case against Mickey Steele and Worms, it would seem that Darren Nichols was a bigger player in all that criminal world than he'd let on. He sort of put it all on Mickey Steele, as Mickey Steele being the big pin king and he just worked for him, etc. So whether it's true what Carlton Leach said about sort of indicating that he had maybe something to do with the stealing of these drugs, I sort of doubt it. Maybe it was just put in there by the ghostwriter just to spice things up. I don't know. I'd have to ask Carlton himself on that. But it's an interesting dynamic towards it. The actual Essex Boys murders and everything else, that's quite an interesting dynamic between Carlton and all the furore about it now, because Carlton was pretty plugged in the East End area. So I'm sure you probably know more about it than what he lets on. But as they say, loose lips sink ships, and it's not something that I would be looking to get involved in. I think, if I'm right in thinking, Mickey Steele should be released sometime soon, hopefully, because it's my belief that they were innocent. And hopefully he gets out to live a few years or whatever time left he's got in life, not behind bars. Okay, thank you for listening and watching. Like I say, put your comments in, put your thoughts in the comment section, and I'll get back to as many as I can. For those who listen to me regularly, the operation went really well. Already, I'm back walking, doing a bit on the bag, lifting some light weights after the major surgery. So got the all clear. Everything went amazing. I was in ICU for a couple of days. Then general population. Well, no, the 4-bed level underneath that. Then Gen Pop, and then I was out, and I've been out for a couple of weeks now at home, just eating real healthy, healing well, letting the scar on the neck heal where they operated to take this lump out of their neck, and I feel $1 million. So thank you for all your well wishes. And I've got loads of videos and podcasts and everything else planned in the future, which I'll tell you more about as we go. Baby steps. All right, take care.